He was the kind of man other pilots whispered about in the silence, before takeoff, half in awe, half in disbelief. Captain Daniel "Hawk" Harrington wasn't just a P-38 Lightning ace. He was the storm the Japanese pilots feared, the shadow that arrived out of nowhere, struck without mercy, and vanished into clouds before they could blink. 38 confirmed kills. 38 families grieving on the other side of the Pacific. 38 moments when he should have died but somehow didn't. But the story of men like Hawk never starts with heroism. It starts with something darker. The hook came one humid morning in 1944 as the sun crawled over the coral airstrip on Guadalcanal. The ground crews were already sweating, tools clanking, engines coughing alive. And Hawk, still wearing the same dull green bandana he'd carried since his first mission, stood beside his silver P-38, staring at its twin booms as if they were the only things in the world that understood him. No one talked to him before missions. Not anymore. They'd learned their lesson. "Morning, Captain," a mechanic muttered cautiously. Hawk didn't answer. He didn't even blink. Because somewhere deep inside him, something had shifted, something fragile and dangerous. The Pacific War had taken too much from him. Friends lost over jungles, men burned alive in cockpits, the sound of his own brother screaming the day his bomber went down in flames. Hawk had watched the crash in horror, powerless, his P-38, too far away to help. That single moment carved a hole in him so deep even victory couldn't fill it. Now, every time he strapped into his cockpit, he didn't feel fear. He felt invincible, untouchable, chosen. The Japanese had tried to stop him again and again, Zeros swarming like angry hornets, ambushes over Rabaul, traps disguised as lone scouts. But Hawk cut through them like a blade through cloth. His kill streak rose every week, and every time he returned, he walked across the runway with the same blank, haunted expression. It scared people more than the enemy ever could. Yet, that morning, something felt different. The air tasted heavier. The wind carried a strange quiet. Even the P-38 seemed restless, as if it sensed the storm forming inside its pilot. "Captain, briefing!" someone shouted. Hawk didn't rush. He moved like a man walking into a destiny he already knew. Inside the briefing tent, the mood was thick. General Whitmore pointed at the map, pinned to the wall. Japanese bombers sighted heading toward Bougainville. "We intercept them here. Clear?" the general barked. Everyone nodded except Hawk, who stared at a small cluster of enemy airfields circled in red ink. Secondary target, the one he wasn't allowed to touch. Whitmore turned sharply. "Let me be crystal clear. No one goes below 10,000 feet near the coastline. Heavy AA guns. You go low, you die. Understand?" Hawk didn't blink. Didn't nod. Didn't disagree. He knew what the order meant. He'd flown under those guns before. They spat fire thick as rain and tore aircraft apart like paper. But one of those airfields had been the base responsible for his brother's death. And Hawk hadn't forgotten. He never forgot. When the briefing ended, pilots shuffled out nervously. A few exchanged glances, wondering if Hawk would follow orders this time. He climbed into his P-38 without a word. The canopy sealed shut with a metallic hiss. Then, as the engines roared to life, deep, throaty, powerful, Hawk whispered something only the plane could hear. "Let's finish this." Minutes later, 12 P-38 seconds ripped into the sky, climbing into the blazing Pacific sun. Hawk's plane stayed at the back, silent, watching, waiting. His pulse was disturbingly calm, and as the formation banked toward Bougainville, the moment came. A lone Japanese reconnaissance plane appeared below them, far off course. Nothing dangerous, nothing relevant. Except to Hawk. He peeled off without permission. "Captain Harrington, return to formation," the radio crackled. He didn't answer. He dove. The air screamed past his cockpit, the sunlight flashing off the wings. The recon pilot panicked, cutting sharply. Hawk fired a single burst. The plane exploded in orange fire, but he didn't climb back. No. He kept diving. Toward the coastline. Toward the forbidden zone. Toward the guns that could shred him in seconds. "Captain, you're disobeying orders!" But Hawk didn't care. The only thing he heard was the ghost of his brother calling from the flames. He leveled off at 300 feet, so low, the palm trees blurred into streaks beside him. It was the moment everyone would later call the beginning of the end. Hawk didn't see the jungle, didn't see the coastline rising ahead like a jagged scar. He saw only the airfield, the one that haunted him every night. The one where his brother had burned. He surged forward, throttle tight in his fist. The ocean whipped past under his wings like molten glass. Every instinct screamed at him to pull up, climb, escape the range of the coastal guns, but his heart had become something reckless, something unrecognizable. Ahead, the Japanese airfield burst alive in chaos. Mechanics ran for cover, pilots scrambled, sirens wailed, and Hawk, descending like a demon, lined up his first target, a Zero rolling toward the runway. He fired. The cockpit disintegrated in a flash. He wasn't supposed to feel satisfaction. But he did. Another Zero tried to take off. Hawk dipped a wing, skimming so low he nearly clipped the control tower. He held down the trigger. Bullets walked across the runway, shredding the plane before it could lift. Smoke, fire, panic. The P-38 sliced through it all like a silver ghost, but on the hill overlooking the airfield, the anti-aircraft guns were already turning. Big ones, heavy ones. The same guns that had dragged his brother's bomber from the sky. Hawk saw them. Good, he thought. Let them come. He swooped low, almost absurdly low, tracing the runway like a knife edge. Tracers crackled past him, green streaks, brilliant and deadly. One ripped through his left wing. The P-38 shuddered violently, but Hawk fought to keep control. Then, he saw it. The bomber, the same model that had shot down his brother, sitting alone in the far corner of the airfield like a taunt from the past. His jaw clenched. "This is for you," he whispered. He turned toward it. Every AA gun on the hill opened fire, rivers of fire converging on a single point, him. His radio buzzed desperately. "Hawk, climb, climb, you're going to die down there." But Hawk was gone, lost in a memory only war creates. He lined up perfectly, fired. The bomber exploded in a white-hot blast. But the explosion revealed something else. 3 Zeros diving straight at him. His heart lurched. The P-38 screamed as Hawk yanked the yoke. He shot between the incoming fighters so close he could see a Japanese pilot's eyes widen in shock. He flipped the P-38 on its side, slammed throttle, and rolled behind the first Zero. One burst. Kill number 39. He didn't care about the number. The second Zero cut left. Hawk followed. Their wings nearly touched before he fired again. Kill number 40. The third Zero tried to climb. Hawk tried to follow. But this time, the P-38 didn't respond. The earlier damage had crippled his control surfaces. The plane shivered like a wounded animal, dragging left. Hawk gritted his teeth, forcing the yoke, willing the plane to obey. For a moment, it did. He swung behind the last Zero barely. He squeezed the trigger. Click. Nothing. He was out of ammo. The Zero realized it. The enemy pilot turned, nose pointing straight at Hawk, ready to fire. Hawk braced, but at the last second, a distant P-38 from his group swooped in and blasted the Zero out of the sky. Hawk exhaled. Alive. Barely. His savior climbed away, but Hawk couldn't join him. The P-38 was dying, controls sluggish, engines coughing, warning lights blinking angrily. Behind him, the airfield raged in flames. Smoke reached toward the heavens like black fingers, and for the first time in years, Hawk felt peace. His brother had been avenged. That should have been the moment he flew home a legend. But fate had other plans, and the Pacific wasn't finished with him yet. Hawk tried to climb, but the P-38 refused. The left engine sputtered, coughing black smoke. The right one whined, struggling to keep the aircraft level. He was barely 300 feet above the waves, a death sentence for any crippled fighter. The radio came alive with frantic voices. "Captain Harrington, report status." "Hawk, do you copy?" "Where the hell are you?" He could hear them, but he couldn't answer. His throat felt tight, his mind strangely numb. He looked ahead. The ocean stretched endlessly, glowing gold under the sinking sun. It was beautiful in a cruel, final way. The P-38 dipped. He pulled back. It responded, barely. He knew what this meant. He wasn't making it home. Still, he kept flying. Not out of hope Hawk had lost that long ago, but out of habit. A pilot flies until he no longer can. Minutes dragged, each one heavier than the last. He thought about the orders he'd broken, the warnings he'd ignored, the lives he'd risked. He thought of his brother. "You'd understand," he whispered. But even he wasn't sure anymore. The horizon began to wobble. The wings trembled violently. Alarm lights blinked in a panicked red rhythm. Then, silence. The right engine died. The P-38 rolled sharply left. Hawk fought with everything he had, muscles burning, heart pounding like a drum of war. He pulled the nose up, 300 feet, 260, 260. He could almost see the coral reefs below, bright and deadly beneath the surface. "Hawk, bail out," someone screamed. But the canopy was jammed from the earlier hit. He couldn't open it, couldn't eject. He was trapped in a metal coffin. He exhaled slowly. Maybe this was the ending he always sensed was coming. The ocean rushed upward. He tightened his straps, straightened the plane, tried to make the impact survivable. A strange calm washed over him. He wasn't afraid. He'd spent years outrunning death. Maybe it had finally caught up. The P-38's shadow skimmed over the water. 50 feet, 20, 10. The left wingtip touched the surface. In that instant, Everything exploded. Water surged into the cockpit. Metal twisted. Glass shattered. Hawk's body slammed against the straps as the P-38 cartwheeled across the water, tearing itself apart in a spray of sparks and foam. Then, darkness, silence. Hours later, rescue crews found the wreckage. The P-38 lay half submerged, broken, ruined. But incredibly, Hawk was alive? Barely. They pulled him out unconscious, bleeding, but breathing. His survival became one more impossible chapter in a life filled with them. But he never flew again. The crash didn't end his story. It transformed it. Pilots still speak of him, of the ace the Japanese couldn't stop, the man who defied orders, chased vengeance to the brink of death, and lived long enough to see the cost of his obsession. Some call him reckless, some call him a hero, but all agree on one thing. No one ever flew a P-38 like Captain Daniel Hawk Harrington. Not before him. Not after,